Look, the champion came through on, everything that's been promised. And so I think that the trust needs to be maintained. The patience needs to be maintained with the administration. I don't think we need to be based on revenge. I think that accountability has already been established with the success at the border, with all of the successes that's been accomplished with the bill. I got a check coming tomorrow that's going to be one of the first checks that's tax-free. So, the revenge has already been accomplished in success. And the successes, we won't focus on the interest rates. He's handling that battle. And so that's a big focus. That's a big enemy. When we talk about, having more money in our pockets, being able to, have the financing that we want towards the businesses, to have, opportunities expanded, these businesses expanding and creating opportunities. People who are advanced in our skilled trades, we need to be, focusing on the training of the next upcoming contributors to the workforce, expanding areas of sectors and energy and the infrastructure that's needed to accommodate the electrification goals that we have. And so a lot of big areas of focus that we need to have. Show the successes of the external revenue service, so that we can tackle big things such as the internal revenue service. Showing our the growth that we're going to create with these tax funds that we're going to receive. Showing the growth that we're going to contribute with that, so that then, we can continue to make other big strides. And I'm not saying avoid accountability, but I think that the trust now has to be given. The trust has been earned from the executive branch to allow the administration to continue to run its course. I'm not saying silence your accountability. I don't want accountability or silence. I think that the conversation is healthy, but we don't want to get distracted from a lot of the key areas, the momentum that's being gained. We don't want to allow false pretenses towards the opposition. We want them to have substance with their opposition. We don't want them to have false pretenses of caring about the Epstein situation. They're going to present false pretenses of caring about it, and that's not what we want. We want the opposition to have substance with their development. It may be decades away. It may be a decade or two away if they don't want to clean themselves up. But we can't allow a false pretense with their agenda. And so I think the trust has been established there with all of the accomplishments, again, that we're going to focus on the trade deals that we want to see coming out. The Treasury Secretary saying, they're about to come out in succession. We want to have focus on that, with the successes that we're going to have with our fiscal means now to shore up the supply chains with the opportunities that are going to be coming here. As employees, we need to be, diversifying our investments, so that we can be on, the initial public offerings of these of the supply chain stabilization that the country needs to be steering towards with the trade deals and the opportunities that are going to be here, and also in other nations. When you talk about programs such as U.S. aid, of course, it's Africa Times News. When you talk about so you have programs like U.S. aid that has historical negative connotations. Now that's an opportunity for us as common citizens to have an initiatives that's empowering, that's equity-based and sharing, and that could be, legacy affirmations. And so we have that chance to be a part of that with, with Trump rescinding those historical programs, again, that has negative connotations of imperialism and neo-colonialism. And so, a lot of opportunities in international affairs that needs to be approached differently than the status quo, that needs to be inclusive of the everyday people, to build relationships, to share cultures harmoniously. And so that's something that we can't be on the sideline and just trust our diplomats to have all of the answers for. That's going to have to take private nurturing, and I think that there's no other, steward for that than Pan-Africans. And so we can't have this exterior bickering. Just as if we set the conditions for America to be harmonious with all other cultures, we need to set the conditions for Africa to be harmonious with, the rest of the globe in our native land, And so, the bigger picture is beyond any of these petty grievances. I don't have any petty grievances, of these petty grievances that's beyond that significance, being indigenous or somehow that takes away from, our birthright of the continent and those aspirations, that stewardship, that glory. We can't be deterred from that. And that's a responsibility that the collective involves. We can't just want to cheer on people in sports to be their greatest. If it's a select group of people, we don't have any, insecurities about that or any jealousies at that. If a particular group, is dominating the athletics, so that needs to extend to leadership. It needs to be engineered towards, enhancing that greatness and benefiting for humanity that greatness. And so, that's I'm about to get into this article. Here's a New York Post Jamie Dimon article that was interesting as I was making this address that just popped up that I was reading, that has some great forecasts that's consistent with what I was requesting as far as giving trust with the executive branch. Even with the banks, one of the I'll get to some of the details here, I'll pull it out here. About, a lot of cohesion, there's a lot of, cohesion that's still in opportunities for us as employees to diversify our portfolio as investors in developing markets. You hear a lot of the investors saying that the developing markets is where the action is. And we need to be diversifying those means, to complement unions and things of that nature in the training of the different workforces. I see the Titans and CNC machine popping up right here in my YouTube subscribers there. Of course, in the CNC, that's a great area that we want to train to find precision-based tooling and manufacturing. And also have those opportunities in the developing nations to contribute with aiding their development and having dynamic infrastructure ideas that's diverse and doesn't have to be high impact on the environment. When you talk about now the means of navigation and traveling that we need to be implementing that into that area in the air, the EV air sector, ensuring that that's going to be as safe as possible with redundancies and things, and so there's a lot of areas to be focused on besides revenge and again I'm all about accountability, but having a current observation that the way things are going, we want to keep that momentum. And and that situation, I trust the president with his successes that he's had. The last criticism I gave was of the Iran situation, and I've seen that was, it was completely de-escalated, and so I think that the de-escalation is going to be a constant with, with major conflicts that would have been of disruption with the Straits of Hormuz over there, and so since he's shown through such tension with that to mediate peace. You have the mediation of peace that occurred with Pakistan and India again. I believe he was a good steward in. Of course, those J-10s from China were a big source of calm in that situation as well. But I don't think that Trump did anything to escalate that, and so that's still great stewardship. That could have been something where it could have been boastful opportunities to exercise it. Donate some J-35s to India if they don't have any. I don't think India has any J-35s, but you wouldn't. It could have been an easy opportunity there to donate some just to have some testing. That's a great opportunity in warfare to test the capabilities. And so, that could have been seen as warmongering, and so he could have took that advantage. And so, again, with the course of actions, with the de-escalation and those scenes, I think now we're at a state where we need to trust the executive branch. He's catching the stride. And now we can focus on our own skill sets, our collective skill sets. Ask not what the country can do now. He's showing what the country can do from the executive branch, rallying the legislatures, rallying the Supreme Court recently. So now it's up for us to take advantage of that stewardship and implement our talents so that we can be successful as well with the contributions. And let's not be distracted. A lot of the distractions with the diaspora is ridiculous, and the back and forth with the diaspora, the different the different Africans within the diaspora and the continent, and just a lot of ridiculous rhetoric that I've been trying to, I haven't been as successful as I would like to be in dying down that narrative. There's been other people who's been stepping up, and it's going to continue to falter. It has no numerical. It's just algorithm-based fake news of a representation of the diaspora. When you talk about the FBA situation, a few of the people on the continent who may gravitate towards tit for tat negative. A good source of de-escalation that I think would be with attorney Dennis Spurling and his recent lawsuit against the brother Nefekare Deadline. I think that'd be a good source of us resolving our differences and having a collective purpose that's of cohesion. Don't have to agree on everything, but respect of one another's philosophy of empowerment. I'm biased with the Pan-African Nefekare against Dennis Spurling in this instance, as far as suing the continent, and then having a fence with the scrutiny against suing the continent, and then suing the brother Nefekare. I don't think that it would have that much of an impact on your purpose if your purpose is sincere and isn't compromised, I don't think that Brother Nefekare should have any impact on, contracts that you're able to obtain, on your bottom line. If Nefekare is able to impact your bottom line, then I think that's that's something, that's the situation that needs to be a look in the mirror type of situation. I don't think that I think that the people who would have that opportunity for you are blackmailing you to not be of substance if they're going to allow the scrutiny that the Brother Nefekare gave towards you to then take away an opportunity for you. And so, I think if that's truly the case, then I think that coming out to the brother and saying, hey, this has impacted me fiscally, when you talk about a Pan-African structure such as the International Black Forum or any other, there's a lot of forums that are out and about nowadays. They have the what do they call them? The pop-ups. The pop-ups. They're similar to, that's a International Black Forum type of structure where you all can have cohesion towards empowerment that's within both of your respective interests, and that'll be a good way of moving forward. You have to acknowledge that there's a will to want a disconnect of Africans in the diaspora to connect with those on the continent. So to have any type of malice or any type of ill will towards that, it isn't productive towards the empowerment of black men, if that's what you're about, or black families, or black culture. To be in any type of opposition with reunification of the diaspora, the Caribbean, or the continent, it's an self-indictment against sincere intent. And so I would hope that that we can move on from whatever grievances we have towards the bigger picture. In particular with the Dennis Spurling lawsuit against Nefekare, and then having that spirit of reconciliation and forgiveness, being reflected in our affairs with our continued repatriation efforts on the continent. Most of our affirmations, all of our, our greatest affirmations is going to come from the reunification with the continent, or being left behind from reuniting with the continent. Okay? And so we have a responsibility in the diaspora to be humble, and I know that we're given enough respect, so I don't have to ask for respect from the continent. I know that the respect, the admiration is there from the continent's end enough, so I don't have to speak on that. I don't have to focus on little small, minute insignificance, And so yeah, I think we need to focus on. Yeah, so I want to read this interesting article here in the Post, New York Post here, James Franey, and it's about J.P. Morgan's. It's titled "J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon warns of significant risk to U.S. economy over Trump trade policies." Now, what's interesting is he spent most of the article, however, explaining all of the benefits that we're enjoying. He speaks of all of the benefits that we can continue to look forward to enjoying. And he has right here on the screen here on the video play, as you look at the Post article, it has the chairman there, Powell here. And what's interesting about that is, he's echoing the wait and see sentiments that the chairman has had, with him, with his reluctance of lowering the interest rate, and so, everything that he wants to, everything that, you would anticipate gloom and doom with this article. That's what it clickbaited me there with the doom and gloom with with Jamie Dimon. Usually he was speaking to pessimism. I give him some attention besides the others. But as I said, most of the article is praise and the outlook is praise. And it says, Jamie Dimon warned that President Trump's trade policies pose significant risk. That's a wait and see process because he's not explaining what the risk is, nor what have we suffered as a result of that. So a significant risk to the U.S. economy, even as the bank announced the second quarter profits that were once again boosted by its trading. Dimon, at the helm of J.P. Morgan for nearly 2 decades, reiterated that the commander-in-chief tariff plans could upend growth while praising the passing of Trump's big, beautiful bill. If you're praising the big, beautiful bill, that means you're anticipating the economy being unleashed, prosperity continuing. So you can't think that it's going to upend. The only reason why he thinks he just has that part of the narrative maintained is because the banks hedged. The only losses that are going to be mentioned in this article is when the banks had loans that hedged against the success of this Trump economy. Those are the only losses. And I found it interesting as well that they didn't mention what the interest rates were in the article. We ain't gonna get told what the interest rates are. We ain't gonna get told what that percentage was that was hedged towards the economy failing. The U.S. economy remained resilient in the quarter. The finalization of tax reform and potential deregulation are positive for economic outlook, Dimon said, also pointing to an uptick in the company's investment banking profits that were late. They did these investments late because they were counting on the success of the loans that hedged against the success of the tariffs. These investments that they're boasting about here were recent, after seeing all of the action of the other traders. However, significant risk persists, Dimon carries on, including from tariffs and trade uncertainty. That wait and see that the chairman was talking about. Trade uncertainty, worsening geopolitical conditions. Again, I just spoke of how Trump tamed those geopolitical. He's continuing to tame the geopolitical positions. Every week we hear about a win in this trade deal, a win with Britain, a win with the EU, a win with Canada, a win with de-escalation and conflict. And now, all of those successes now gives the opportunity to focus in on on Jerome, focus in on Vladimir, focus in on President Xi for trade negotiations. I haven't studied the African invitation yet. I've had there's been some unfavorable reports about one of the leaders who obtained leadership from a coup. He's the only brother that's being accepted from the coup, from the series of coups that's been occurring for self-determination in Western Africa. I haven't heard good reports on one of the particular participants, but I still have to study what has been the proposals for Trump with the continent, with the 5 people who were invited to see and analyze if it's going to have parity with the trade tariffs being freed, the removal of tariffs against 54 of the 55 nations on the continent, I believe, with China. So that's a big deal. That's a very big deal of an impact. That's a 2050 type of vision that all hands on deck needs to be on board about. That can that's just great for bilateral situations as far as the collective of the entirety of the continent with China. That's a great bilateral situation. I think we can continue to enhance those as a continent. I don't think that BRICS is up to par for that. So again, continuing on here, the geopolitical conditions. Again, I don't think that they're worsening with Trump. Again, that leads over into, again, the trust that we need to have with the leadership so that we can focus in on what we're going to contribute to our respective communities, our respective states, and, in our respective international interests. It says here, America's business lender said its net income fell to 15 billion. Net income fell to 15 billion, down 17% from the same period last year. That's going to explode. That's going to continue to explode. That's why they made the investments. This was due to a one-off $8 billion gain in 2024 from its stake in credit card provider Visa. It says JP second quarter profits are equal to $5. Some more highlights of here that I wanted to point out there that I was explaining. Again, the firm's investment banking unit was also up 8% to $2.5 billion in the first signs that deal-making doom and gloom is starting to lift on Wall Street. Again, the investment banking has its first signs that the doom and gloom is starting to lift. That means they've had success. They anticipate success with the investments, but they just start making them. Okay, they just what my post a few months before January, before the inauguration, was about doom and gloom and the tariffs proven record. Doom and gloom and the tariffs proven record, and so that was way then predicting what they now are seeing recently. To as far as the doom and gloom lifting, they just started now to make these investments, and again, it's up 8% already, even with the late investments. The chief financial officer, Jeremy Barnum, said the bank's deals pipeline was robust, and that M&A sentiment was noticeably more upbeat. Okay, both divisions performed better than management's earlier guidance. In May, JP Morgan, a mid-teens percentage drop in investment banking fees, while trading revenue is expected to grow by a mid to high single-digit percentage. Okay. With Citigroup. Citigroup is up 25% from a year ago. Okay. Significantly higher than estimates by the London Stock Exchange Group. Okay. Banking was another bright spot. This again, I believe, is still with Citigroup here, with revenue up. Is this Citigroup or banking was another? Yeah, I think there's still Citigroup I'm reading about here. Yeah, we're still reading about Citigroup. And with the revenue from banking was up 18% over the second quarter of 2024, even with losses on loan hedges. You see, even with losses on loan hedges. So there were loans, they were issuing loans to hedge against the success. And so we don't get told what those losses were on those loan hedges, but it must be. It leaves room for the imagination that is admitted. Okay. But again, great news with the economy that I think is of more substance right now than revenge, because that's what it would be. It would be revenge. It would be revenge. I believe it was Bill Barr. He said those wheels of that justice, those gears of that justice grind slow, and so we want to be patient. We don't want to be again distracted and removing momentum. with something that the only thing would be done once we implement and take the accountability steps is going to be told that we're autocratic and we're cultists for supporting the accountability. And so, a few more steps of success. And then, as I said, I don't want to bash people who expect accountability. I was there. I was 10 times more passionate than you guys are about this Jeffrey Epstein thing back when Trump allowed them to shut down his economies. The steps that he took in California recently is what I was saying to take way back when way before the George Floyd, when they were trying to shut down. I said when they was trying to shut down, I said take the steps that he eventually now has taken here in Cali. That's what I was saying, to prevent the shutdowns. If they shut down, replace their business, give somebody else a grant to keep that business going. We're not shutting down our booming economy. And that's what I wanted. And so you guys passionate about this Jeffrey Epstein situation, is minuscule to my frustration at that, And so, while I understand the frustration right now, the upside of what we're accomplishing right now is way better, obviously, than the fear that I had substantiated with the COVID hoax genocide. We're not risking that right now. With this, well, I guess you guys could argue that if he doesn't take those same type of players down right now with the Jeffrey Epstein situation, then we're still vulnerable. But again, I think that situations like what's going on with the attempted insurrection in California recently, I think it shows that that Trump has a grasp right now of the leadership he's in stride, and that we need to trust the executive branch.